Hello, everyone. This is Rob Golfi with REMAX, the Golfi Team. Welcome to the Golfi Real Estate Show, Niagara edition with host Tim Dennis.
And we're underway for another week of talking real estate. And there's quite a bit to talk about this week. We're going to be all over the place. Bank of Canada setting rates, amortization rates changing, rent control loopholes. We got a ton of stuff to get to today. Not only is Rob Golfi going to be with us, as he always is, but his special guest, Nick Bontis, is with us this morning. Nick is a professor, award-winning professor at MAC. Of course, president of Canada Soccer and vice president of CONCACAF. And, of course, they're going to be hosting the FIFA 2026 World Cup in Canada. And these days is also a keynote speaker, talks about all kinds of subjects around the world, industries, including the real estate business. Nick, welcome.
It's great to be here with the ubiquitous, the infamous, the ever-present Rob Golfi.
Oh, I love that. And I didn't have to pay him for that. No, I'll give you $100 later. Give you $100 later.
You forgot omniscient, and so there are lots of other words to go in there. But let's get going in the show this week. Talk to me about this past week, Rob, and as we head into almost the last week of April, what are we doing?
So the one thing I really noticed is that when people called and wanted to look at their house and look at possibly listing their house in November, December, we were looking at stats of the previous 60 to 90 days, which weren't that great. And so we based on our information based on what's happening in the market at the time. Usually I tell people, let's say, maybe you should wait till February, March to put your house on the market. You get better results. And it is the truth. They are getting better results. That difference of 4 months, 3 to 4 months with the spring market, plus with the confidence level that's in the marketplace, really made a difference. Because I'm seeing houses that I probably thought were worth maybe $550 are getting close to $600, just in that 3-4 month difference. Now, I'm basing my information what's happened, and I'm basing it also what I think what a willing buyer is willing to pay if I was looking at houses in November, December. But now things are better. Houses are selling, and now if we go 60 days back, we're looking back at this year's numbers, not last year's numbers, and there is definitely an improvement. So if you had your house on the market last year and it didn't sell, or earlier this year, maybe January and parts of February, chances are it would have been tougher to sell. But now things are moving along. We're in April, and people are starting to get their number or better in certain circumstances in certain ways. So that's what I just want to relay in the marketplace, because sometimes us as realtors will go in and we give them a number based on last year, but then they think, oh, that's not good. They go in this year and it's a higher number, and then they think the realtor is not capable or wasn't educated enough to know what the market is. We gave you numbers based on the market of last year, not this year. So just forgive any realtors that didn't get the listing, and the lucky realtor this year that did. But
right, let me ask you a quick question. As a realtor, as Rob Golfi, and the Golfi team, and this show is called Golfi Real Estate Show. If you remember the first quarter of 2023, and then you look at the first quarter of 2024. What's the comparison? Are we better now? Are we coming out of the woods here? How would you characterize that right now, Rob?
So we had a really good first quarter of 2023, and I'm like looking at the first quarter of 2024, going, I don't know if I can match that, because we had such a phenomenal first quarter. We're on track. We're matching it. The unit sales in general are down, but volume of business is pretty well close to the same. And so things are moving along. And what's happening is there are multiple offers happening on certain properties because they were priced right. And, there's more than two buyers or more than one buyer looking at it. But what I do feel is the second half of this year is going to outperform the second half of last year, of 2023. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really banking on that, that our numbers are going to be way higher this year in unit numbers, just because of the second half of 2024. Because like last year, Like it was almost like dormant. It was ghost town. We could have left to go on vacation for 2 months and nobody would have noticed we were gone. So
You did, didn't you?
yeah, I wish I did. I wish I did.
Yeah.
So
Hey, let's include Dr. Nick in this for a couple of moments. When you're talking about real estate to industries across Canada, Doctor, what are you talking about?
Well, first of all, you can't talk about real estate without talking about interest rates, and we know what happened just over the last couple of days. But the other thing that's really remarkable with the real estate industry, it's entrepreneurial, and that's what I like about it. You know, if you wanted to establish a career in an industry where you didn't want to be working the standard 9 to 5 for a corporate job at a bank, let's say, or a large retailer, the real estate industry offers you that opportunity to be your own business, your own entrepreneur. And in Rob's case, it's not that he's just an entrepreneur, but he also helps to supply and support dozens and dozens of other entrepreneurs that want to launch their business within that context. So that's the macro impact of the real estate industry that I like to talk about, this entrepreneurial spirit that you can build. If you're a salesperson, if you're a relationship person, if you're a people person, it's a wonderful industry to be in. I've had close ties to this industry for a long time, given my family. And I also think that it's an industry that requires replenishment. And that's the other positive thing about the real estate industry. You know, realtors are getting older. I know we don't like to say it, but they are. Rob still looks young. But realtors are getting older. And if you if you look at the young generation, they're not so much into the whole kind of traditional corporate environment thing. They're looking for new ways to kind of be their own boss. And I think the real estate industry is very, very attractive for young university or college grads.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
This is as a professor at McMaster University. Yeah.
Rob, people coming in, talking to you about wanting to buy a house. Do you get a lot of situations where the husband wants one thing, the wife wants something else, and do you play marriage counselor in situations like that?
All the time. So I have this couple, and they actually work with me. They're a husband and wife. They work with me here, and they're part of my team. And he has a builder that has a lot that can build a house that they want, right? And then the wife, would prefer to buy a resale that everything's done. They just move in, and maybe just the most they have to do is paint. So I gave my pluses and minuses of what I thought. I said to the gentleman on my team, I said, listen, Chris, I wouldn't go with the new build because it's going to cost you a lot more. You think you're budgeting this X amount of dollars, but then when it comes down to the finishes, you're going to walk into the plumbing store. You're going to walk into the all these different locations. You say, well, I want this trim. Well, this trim wasn't included with this building style. So if you want this trim, it's going to be more. If you want that toilet, if you want upgraded toilets, it's going to cost you $500 more a toilet, or maybe even more. If you want like the sink, the granite, all that. So the one thing about buying new is it takes your time. If you're a busy person and you got to go shop around to all these locations to figure out what you want to do, that's going to take your time. That's going to cost you because you're taking time away from your business. Two, also, you are once you're finished, you got to do the landscaping, the parking lot, the driveway, the curtains and the blinds and appliances, and you're not getting a finished basement with that. So there's a lot of money put in afterwards, even after you're finished, even after you're finished the over budget that you didn't expect. And then so that's the one aspect of it. Now on the resale, there's people that finished their house. They got their basements finished. They did all the wall coverings, the drapery. They got the the nice expensive appliances. They got the fenced-in yard, the deck, the pool. They got everything in there. You just buy it, you move in, and it's done. Yep, and I'll give you a perfect example. And this happens a lot, especially you notice it a lot in country properties. When you're driving around country property, you see a brand new house built, and then you drive by a year later, nothing has changed on the outside. The driveway, the long 200-foot long driveway is still stone, no bushes in the front, it looks the same like they just finished building it, and that's it. They stopped. It's because they went way over budget on their build, and they couldn't they just can't do the rest. They have to wait till they make more money and do it slowly over time, and especially country properties, because they're so big. You spend money on landscaping, you don't even notice it. So when you're spending money, like if you want to plant 10 trees, you don't see it. It's like, where are these trees? Because it's so big. So that's what I suggested to him: buy resale, and not because I don't want him to buy new, because he's a realtor, he knows. So he won. So she won the battle because what I said. So I think that's the proper way. What's your thoughts on it?
I think it also has to do with headaches.
Yeah.
You know, when you're buying a million new things because it's a new home, every single thing that you buy is a potential new headache. I remember when we were purchasing or building our new home, every day was a battle. And, you know, now at my age, I don't want to deal with battles anymore.
No.
I'd rather make it an easier thing. So there's the financial part of it, but there's the mental health side of it as well.
Yeah, especially.
So with the government, both the federal government and the provincial government and municipal governments pushing this idea of building more homes, got to build them right now. How much is that affecting you? Are you going to find in the next little while you got a whole bunch of new homes to build? Or are you hearing from builders that it just isn't that profitable yet?
You know what? The builders are scared because what happened was they've bought a lot of lots, land, whatever they did. They're holding on it. They're paying interest on these properties, and they don't want to start something where it could financially bankrupt them. So they are waiting for, I think, interest rates to come down, because people aren't there's not lineups at the when they have an opening at these new home sites, and so they're saying, listen, I'm not taking the risk. I'm not going to spend all this marketing and get all this going, and I get, you know, maybe I've got 100 homes, but I only sell 5 or 6 of them. It is very costly to do that to start marketing it. So they're just waiting to see, you know, with interest rates a little bit and to come down or whatever. But they need to build houses. We've got a problem right now, like, yeah. and that problem is getting bigger and bigger. It's like a toilet. You know what? You try to plunge it, but there's something blocking it down the tube, down the line. You just keep pushing and pushing. It's just not going. We got that problem with houses. We don't have enough houses.
Yeah.
And the longer we sit where we are idling, just kind of going through, houses are being built right now, but not that many.
No.
But it's going to get to a point where we're going to be in big trouble, and they're still bringing immigration in this country, and that's where the clogging is going to happen with the immigration.
I agree with you, Rob. We got a supply-demand crunch right now. Massive demand, not enough supply. I think we're going to see record amount of construction, probably out to 26, 27. Two big drivers, of course, are immigration. You know, the wonderful policies of our federal government are bringing new people into this country, which is great because they're the ones doing the type of work that Canadians don't want to do. But those people need to live somewhere. So new houses for them. The second driver I'd like to talk a little bit about is what COVID did to the inventory. So during that period, you had young professionals, 26, 27, 28 years old, wanted to purchase something, didn't because the market wasn't in their favor, waited. Now, it's been 4 years since COVID, so now the 26-year-old is 30. And by the time 2026, 27 rolls around, they're going to be 32. So their ascendancy in terms of what income they're going to be able to bring in is going to allow them to be able to afford a down payment for that new single detached home, which was always their dream. So I think those are the two massive drivers. I agree with Rob 100%. We're going to see a massive market ascendancy. If you can hold off, that's fine. If you can't, that's fine too. But we also expect interest rates to get a little bit lower between now and 26 as well. That is a perfect storm of factors coming together that's going to drive the volume of housing.
I hear optimism from both of you in some respects. Am I hearing that right, Nick? Let me start with you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, optimism is good. I like watching interest rates because it's like a sport now. You know, everybody's like, are they going to drop? Are they not going to drop?
Yeah.
You know, they didn't this past week, and everybody thought maybe they did or maybe they would. But I also like looking at bigger picture. You know, we try to compare the 5% we're at with the 2%, let's say, that we were at the beginning of COVID. But you know what? Compare it to the 22% that my parents had in the 70s or something like that. And then you realize, wow, man, 5%. None of us would admit right now that it's a gift to be at 5% because we want to be lower. But truth be told, in the grand scheme of things, 5% is a gift.
Yeah.
And, you know, we always play that game where I wish I shoulda, woulda, coulda, right?
Yeah.
When I had an opportunity to get a mortgage on a property up north at 1.7%, I shoulda, woulda, coulda and gotten more. Well, guess what, man? 5% ain't that bad either, right?
Yeah.
It's a matter of what you can afford, let's be honest. But in the grand scheme of things, 5% is still quite attractive.
Yeah, it's just a relative thing, right, Nick? If you
Yeah.
were paying 1.5 or 2, and then suddenly it goes to 5, you've got a big difference. That's
Right.
all. So it's all relative at this point. Let's take a quick break here, and we will get right back to it on the Golfi Real Estate Show. Welcome back. It's the Golfi Real Estate Show. I'm Tim Dennis. Rob Golfi is here, and our special guest this week is Professor Nick Bontis from McMaster University. We've been talking about interest rates. So I have to ask you this because this wasn't on the list of things we were going to talk about this, but it's a story that came out today. And I have to ask you, Rob, and you, Nick, the government announcing today that in the budget, the upcoming budget, they're going to talk about increasing amortization to 30 years for new home buyers who are basically buying new builds. Now, we talked about new builds versus older homes a couple of moments ago. Is this something that is good news for you, Rob? Let's start with you.
Yeah, it is good news, but why just, just do it for new homes? Give it to all first-time buyers on all homes. Like what? Why are they doing this? You know what it is? You know what the government does? They open it up, say, "Oh, that's a good thing they did," and then they need something good to say in 6 months from now. Well, let's open that up to the new for all homes. Like, you know what I mean? Just do it. Like, you know what? We need business people running this country, not puppets. And Nick, you gotta am I right about this 100%. Or not?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, this. Isn't there normal people sitting around the desk saying, no, let's do the whole thing because not just new homes? Like,
you know what? Here's the wrong assumption some policy wonk in Ottawa made. They made the assumption that the kind of livable value or livable tenurability of a home is easier to hit 30 years when it's a new home versus an old home. That's BS. It doesn't really matter. We're all living in homes, most of us, for our life. Let's be honest. You got people who are living in their homes for full 30 years. I'm almost living in the house that I'm in for almost 30 years, and I still consider myself relatively young. But when I saw that come out today, I thought to myself, thank God, look at our neighbors down south, Rob, and what they do with mortgage rates and what they do with interest rates. And also let's add the tax treatment of those interest and mortgage rates. And here we are in Canada, 100 years later, catching up to what Americans have had with a 30-year amortization. It's sad that we're behind. Yeah. But you know what? Let's try to be positive. It is Friday.
Yeah.
It's good. I think, if we can make the amortization longer, which allows people to get in to make the purchase for the home, all the better.
Real quick housekeeping thing here, because there are people listening to this show, Nick, there are people listening to this show, Rob, who are hearing the term amortization and they're saying, okay, you're speaking Greek to me. What does that mean? I haven't owned a home before and I'm thinking of it. What does amortization mean? What's the easiest way of explaining that?
Just want to let you know, Nick Bontis is Greek.
Yes. Great segue. Great segue, Tim.
Greek, yes.
But yeah.
So generally speaking, I think to kind of communicate it in layman's terms, you're basically looking at the calculation over time that allows you to look at what the principal could be. Let's not forget that when you're making a payment, part of that payment is principal and part of that payment is interest, right? So we always talk about the interest portion because interest rates are all over the news and everybody knows what's going on with interest rates. People tend to not talk about the principal component that much. That's where amortization actually comes into play. So over a longer period of amortization, in theory, the principal payment for that will be lower as well. So it's a good thing, Tim, in that the two components of what people pay for when they have a mortgage, interest and principal, will now, with this announcement today and the fact that interest rates are hopefully getting lower, both those components will get lower, which just means more affordability, because the last thing we want as Canadians is the percentage of disposable income that you have, i.e. the amount of money you make in your job that goes towards paying that mortgage payment. It's relatively high right now, which is what's causing a little bit of the market malaise and the economic downturn in housing. And what we want to do is make that proportion get a little bit lower in line with other G7 economies around the world. At the end of the day, that's kind of the layman's explanation.
All right. There was a headline this week from CMHC that said home prices could hit record levels by 2026 because there's going to be, in their words, an unrelenting demand. Now, when I hear the words record-setting prices, I think back 2 or 3 years to when prices went absolutely crazy.
Yep.
Are we talking about prices going back up there, Rob?
Absolutely. And I've mentioned this on the radio before, indicating that we are going to see another boom. And that's why people need to get into a house and buy a property now, whether they're going to live in it or stay home with their parents or whatever they're doing. Get your house on a deed on a property right now, because we are going to see this record numbers happening in 2026 and 2027. Interest rates are going to be better. They're going to bring in a lot more incentives for builders to build more faster, and they're going to lift probably some green belts in the next year or two. Just I know the Ford government did, and he got a little bit backlash because he probably had some of these developers at his daughter's or son's wedding, and so that big mistake on his part. But anyway, like he is trying to solve the problem, and they kind of backlash, and they kind of he tried to take a big step forward. Now they went two or three steps backwards. So they're going to eventually lift these greenbelt properties, and but they're just gonna have to wait maybe another year or two.
Those are the factors, Rob, I agree with. I think that I'm gonna add another one too, and that is when the market did peak, let's say circa 2021
in the first quarter of 2022. Yeah.
So what do we know about real estate? We know that in the long run, it goes up. I mean, that's the number one golden rule. Okay, so we've had a dip since that COVID kind of ascendancy, and the way markets work, it's going to go up again. So the economists are projecting a peak in 26 and 27, which I agree with, because it would have been about a 6 or 7 year cycle since the peak in COVID. But the big difference, and this is where I'm crossing my fingers when I tell you this, is that new peak in 26, 27 will not have a pandemic associated with it. And that's the big difference. So Rob is absolutely right. If you're looking as a long-term investor, a short-term investor, getting in now in 24, as the interests are starting to fall down, will allow you to make a massive capital gain appreciation, realized if you sell or unrealized if you don't, if you hold on for at least 2 or 3 years. So I'm happy as a homeowner, and I'm happy as a purchaser of real estate, because it's back to the shoulda, woulda, coulda. Oh my God, I should have sold in 21 in the peak, man. Look what I could have got for that property. But I didn't, because of COVID, and we were home, and we were depressed, sitting in our basement, wearing masks, whatever was going on. But 26, 27 is not going to have that problem. So that's the thing about real estate, the golden rule. You can hold on for the long haul. You will realize the benefits of another peak.
So if this happens in June and the Bank of Canada says, we're going to lower the interest rates, are you expecting massive people in your office the next morning, Mr. Golfi, going, all right, interest rates are down, get me a house, damn it?
So what's happening right now is they're holding interest rates, but they're giving rumors that they may drop the interest rate. But if they do, they're only going to do probably a quarter point. Yeah. Now, this is how powerful the media is. So you know how everybody wanted to go to Niagara Falls because of the eclipse, but then they started announcing a state of emergency and people stayed away after. Did you see how the streets were dead? Like, where was everybody? I thought everybody was supposed to go to Niagara Falls. Nobody, you know what I mean? It was still busy in Niagara Falls, but people were starting to cancel their hotel rooms. People were saying, you know what? Listen, I don't want to be part of that mess that's happening on the highway. Or, they were saying they were going to put these potty porters on the highways because people were going to be stuck in traffic for hours. Well, it never happened. So people stayed away. They said, well, I can see the solar eclipse wherever I am in Ontario or whatever. So the same thing is happening with the interest rates. So the Bank of Canada is saying that, we're going to probably drop it in the summer. And so the confidence level's there, and they've not increased it. They just kept it the same for a while. So the confidence level is there. And but when they do drop, I don't think it's going to be a big drop because they don't want to create chaos. No. And that's why they're not doing it now in the spring, because it would drive the market to go up again. And the thing is, back to the, with the market record numbers going to be in 26 and maybe 27, is that they're not stopping immigrants coming in. No. So it's just the government's creating that themselves. So why not, okay, let's say, listen, we got a problem here in this country. Let's hold off on bringing immigration just for now. Okay, let's just put a stop. Let's catch up, and then let's start bringing more immigrants into this country. We know they're the driving force of paying for the baby boomers, for pensions and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just feel that I'm not sure, people are listening. The government's listening to the people.
I believe in the theory of a soft landing. So I agree with Rob. If there is going to be a drop, it'll be a quarter. You know, it'll be 25 basis points at a time. I prefer that, to be honest, because there is a little bit of a shock in a system when it's half a percentage or even 3/4. You know, we've seen experience of that where the interest rate drop was too big. And then what ended up happening that day? The stock market crashed, right? Because it was a better alternative investment. Well, a lot of us, I'm sorry, we're invested in the stock market, either directly or indirectly through our pension or through mutual funds or ETFs or what have you. So if you think you're not going to get dinged on the interest rate, you're going to probably get dinged on the stocks that you might own in your pension or
your
or
RSPs or your mutual funds and stuff like that. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I think to the point of what I predict and what I hope, I do hope for a quarter point over the summer and a steady soft landing of a quarter point all the way down. If we can get back to where we were, 2-3% maybe in a year and a bit, that'd be awesome.
Now, this is a question for both of you. If that interest rate does come down and the governments do listen to you, Rob, and they call you one day and say, Rob, we need some help, and you talk to them, okay, Justin, it's Rob here. Listen, this is what I think you should do. And it makes it easier for people to get into those first homes or even their second or third homes. Do we risk going back to where we were, where it was too easy to get into homes and people were overstretched and financially strapped? Do we risk that?
I don't think we're going to risk that. Well, the one thing is they should get right now. I mean, we're at the max for the stress test. They put that in place because they knew they were dropping interest rates. So in case it went up, people still can afford. Well, now people have to qualify. What is it, 7 or 8%? Well, that's a little tough for people to qualify for that. Get rid of it and then bring it back maybe again if interest rates drop too much. So that's one. I think when people are coming in, like if they drop it a quarter point, definitely people are going to come back into the market. We'll probably see builders start noticing that they're going to start coming in and say, okay, let's launch a subdivision. There's big demand out there. There's a lineup of people. And there are some small little builders that are building like maybe a groups of 100 homes in their first phase, and they're selling out. They are selling out in some cases, but builders are afraid to do it. The larger guys that have a lot of capital behind them that can do that, they're doing it. But the small guys, they're scared. And they're not going to do it. But we need those small guys, and we need everybody to be building to catch up. But the thing is, we're never going to catch up. The way it's going, we're not going to catch up with the demand that there's out there. So that's why real estate for the next 20 years is going to be the greatest investment, even better than the last 40 years. But it's going to be even better in the next 20 years. So Nick, I don't know. Do you agree with me on that?
I do, but I think the one important key term here is discipline. You got to have discipline. Even when you attend a party and everybody's having fun and the alcohol is flowing, you got to have discipline. Because if you don't have discipline, you're going to blow yourself up. Same thing in the real estate market. So, the interest rates might fall and you think, okay, I'm going to go see my mortgage broker. I'm going to go to the bank and visit my bank and see what my banker's going to tell me. Every time you have that conversation, and I've heard this conversation even in my home where you think you're stretching too much. Well, I want this house, but this one was a little bit better, but it was a little bit more, but it's going to stretch me a little bit too much. That's when emotion gets in. And when you get emotional, the idea of empirical decision-making and knowing that you can afford something goes out the window. And I know people get emotional because the house is the most important purchase of your life. But in order to benefit from the 20-year ascendancy, Rob, that you talk about in this industry, you got to be disciplined. What can you afford? What can your broker tell you you afford? What can you qualify for? And be committed that that's what you're going to go for. Because once you start stretching way too much, you're being undisciplined, and that's when you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a pause here because if we try and get into anything else, we will run out of time. Rob, just a real quick note before we go any further. If people have questions about real estate or they want to have a look at how much their place might be worth, what's the best place to check on that now?
You can go to robgolfi.com or go or check us out at golfihomevalue.com. Type in your address in there. It will get you. It's a system set up to give you a general idea of what your house could be, but the true value will be when we come there and look at it, and it's no cost. No obligation. We can come and check it out. But give us a call or at 905-641-0308.
It's the Golfi Real Estate Show. Rob Golfi is here. I'm Tim Dennis, and our special guest in studio with Rob today is Professor Nick Bontis from McMaster University, who speaks on all kinds of issues, but has a specialty in real estate because that's why he's on this show. Fair enough. Dr. Nick is with us as well. So let's talk about something we haven't gotten to this week. We've been talking about people getting mortgages and buying houses and building new houses. The people who don't do that are renting, and some new rent, or at least some proposed rent control changes are off in the distance a little bit. And we have been dealing with an old-fashioned rental industry in Ontario for quite some time, which has seen our rates go way up. Rob, as a guy who is also a landlord, where are we with rent control right now?
It's not in a good situation. The government's doing a terrible job of managing it, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get better. For some reason, after COVID, the Landlord-Tenant Board is gone down the toilet, and they're not doing any good for landlords. They're not doing any good for tenants, you know. But they've got to fix it because tenants are taking advantage of the landlord. And the more they do that, the more there's going to be problems out there. Well, look what happened to somebody that, you know, got murdered in a landlord shot the tenants. People are getting beat up, and people, like, you're bringing people on the brink of to be insane, to do things that they wouldn't normally do, but because it's a financial situation that is causing them a life-changing situation in their life, like they may end up losing their house or whatever. It's because these tenants are doing that, and they don't care. They do not care. I just had a lady, she, you know, let somebody in, rented out her house to somebody. And she didn't even get first and last month's rent. You know, she gave him the keys. She goes, and then they were going to get the money together. Boom! Right away, he had a truck with a moving truck, backed in there, moved everything in, and guess what? That's when the problem started. That's when the problem started. And she did it on her own. She got the Kijiji client from Kijiji. And if she hired a professional, we would have done a credit check on this person. Right. We would have verified who they are, what they are, driver's license and everything. I'm going to tell you, like, tenants, I go, look, if you keep this up, it's going to turn on you. It's just when it's going to turn. Yeah. And guess what? You're going to be one of those people pitching a tent off the side of the highway one day. And because, you know why? Because there's going to be a record of you doing this to landlords. And like, I know I'm a landlord. I'm being a little bit passionate about this, and I'm sorry, but I've seen it. It hasn't happened to me because I screen the tenants. Like, if it takes me 2 months, 3 months, I'll wait for the right person. Yeah. I'm not just taking anybody. But now, with rent control loopholes, people are you know, like, I know the government's trying to change things, and they're trying to change it in a way where, you know, rent evictions, and, you know, let them leave for a bit, and then hopefully they don't come back and they can raise the rent. I get that. I understand that. But there's also people paying what do you call it, tenants to leave. So now, and that you would know a lot about this, Nick, is a apartment building. If I'm buying an apartment building, right, I'm buying it based on, okay, how many tenants are in there? Okay, there's 200 tenants in there. Okay, if I wanted to get rid of maybe 50% of tenants that are not paying at par rent, how much is it going to cost me to get rid of each one? So if you got an apartment building of 100 units, 50 units, do I have to pay $10,000, $15,000 for each tenant to leave, to find some place else to move, and then, you know, fix those units up and then rent it to somebody else at market rent. That's what's happening right now. But here's the problem now. The buyer of that apartment building, yes, can offer them that, but then sometimes they'll take that deal, but then they renege on that deal to the tenant, because now they're starting to look and they're going, wait a minute, I'm paying $1,000 a month now. The closest thing even close to what I have is $1,800 a month. Even though they got $10,000 or $15,000 from the new landlord, that'll carry them for maybe 6 months or whatever. But as soon as they have that kind of money in their bank account, they're going to burn it. They're not going to use it. So, like, it's.
So let me come at it from the renter's point of view for a couple of minutes, because we always think, oh, there are rent controls on. You can't raise You can't just go in willy-nilly and raise rental rates. It's got to be under rent control guidelines. But the story that I was reading talked about, well, St. Catharines, Niagara being one of the highest increases in rental units quite some time across the country. And the loopholes they talk about are the fact that vacant units are exempt, which means, when somebody moves out, you can increase the rent as much as you want for the next one. Okay, fair enough. Rent controls do not apply to any unit added to the market since November of 2018.
Yeah.
So newer ones are not controlled by rent controls. And because of that, some people are saying that rents are going sky high out of the reach of the average person. How do you react to that?
Well, the one thing is the government needed to put an incentive for the developer that's going to build apartments, because they weren't building them since the 70s. And when they put the rent control into place, developers said, well, I'm not building any apartments because you guys are under rent control. There's no profit. So the government said, well, okay, listen, we got to do something. So now a lot of apartment buildings are being built in the last 5 years or so. And now they're going, like, you can't go to the developer and say, hey, we're going to put you under rent control, because guess what? We got a crisis. We need more apartment buildings. Yeah. So they need that. They need these buildings built. Otherwise, these developers will not build these apartment buildings. So we need that. And I get it. And there was talk about them talking about that. Once a tenant leaves a unit, okay, it's empty now. And usually the landlord would clean it up, paint it up, get it ready for the next tenant, and able to get that unit to market rent. Well, they're talking about not market rent, whatever the past tenant was paying for. Right. That's going to create another disaster, because you're going to see a lot of landlords getting out of this business. And it's like people are, the landlord takes the risk in buying the property, renting it out, and doing a service for the tenant, doing a service for the government, doing a service. He takes the risk. Whether the market's going to go up or down, he takes the risk. Why make it more risky for him to make the rent? Because nobody's going to end up buying these properties. And they're going to, yeah.
You nailed it, Rob. The risk is borne by the owner, by the landlord. Now, let me preface my comments by saying there are good and bad landlords, and there's good and bad tenants on both sides. Now, I'm not a landlord, but my dad is a landlord, and I've been forced to now manage some of his properties because he's of that higher age. And I hear crazy stories too, of bad landlords who, say a family member's going to move in, so that entitles them now to to kick the tenant out. A family member goes in, who knows how long they stay, and then they send at market prices. But I've also heard the opposite, Rob, where there are now professional tenants, guys who go around, know the loopholes, how to scam the system, and can walk away with not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars of rent because they know the intricacies. How do we know the system is broken? It's very, very simple. The volume of cases at the board is skyrocketing. You can't even get a case within
10 months.
It's insane.
Maybe a year.
So imagine you're a landlord, and you're not going to hear your case for a year. Like, there goes a whole bunch of rent for 12 months.
Yeah.
That's how you know the system's broken.
Let's move ahead to another issue, which it's funny. I think back to a TV show, wasn't that long ago, called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And there was, at a time, it was a great title because...
Tim, how about the song by the Bare Naked Ladies? If I had $1 million,
it was a mythical thing, right? It was a mythical number. If I had $1 million, just ask the Bare Naked Ladies. But everybody wanted to be a millionaire. And now we're in a situation where average home prices in Vancouver and Toronto are above $1 million. So what does it mean to be a millionaire anymore? Is there a next step that we're, who wants to be a millionaire? Who wants to be billionaire?
I want to be a multi-millionaire.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're right.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, when you look at the average home and it's over $1 million, what does it mean to be a millionaire? That's the first thing. The second thing is, people need to understand, when you say if I had $1 million, that's different than being a millionaire, right? So $1 million in cash, I open up my bank account on my mobile app on my phone and I see 7 digits. Damn, that's different than owning a home that's worth $1.1 million and me having half of it on a mortgage. I have a similar problem as a university professor. Let me say this out loud, because I belong to something crazy called the Sunshine List. The Sunshine List means that anybody who makes over $100,000 that works for a government or a quasi-government entity like a university gets their name and their salary published for all to see. That Sunshine List has been around at least a couple of decades. $100,000 a couple of decades ago was way different than $100,000 today.
Yeah.
You got nurses and police officers that are making $200,000-$300,000 that are on the Sunshine List today. So the answer to your question, Tim, is yeah, times are a-changing. You know, the million is not the million that it used to be, just like the Sunshine List is not the Sunshine List that it used to be. And I think that the biggest problem now as a father, I'm going to say, is my children who are 20, 19, and 17. I shudder to think, let's start with my 20-year-old, when he decides to, meet a fine lady who decides to set up a household and have some children. What's it going to take for that kid when he's 27, 28, 29 years old to start to buy that home? Is he going to have to rent like we were just talking about?
Yeah.
Is he going to have the dream? Will he have to purchase something that's a little bit less significant? That we have the dream of the single detached home for everybody in this country. What's it going to cost to get a single detached home, 8, 9 years from now for that generation of children? It's going to be extremely difficult. I see a lot of kids in that generation, Rob, because you got kids in that generation, or your younger daughter. They're going to be living in our basement, man, longer and longer, because it's going to be difficult for them to afford to get out on their own.
So we're basically the areas of the $1 million homes. They became millionaires by default. Yes. And but yeah, it is the way that homes values are going up, and especially, like our parents, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they've got houses they probably bought, for $20,000, $30,000, 30, 40 years, 50 years ago. And now, like, wow, like, to them, that's a lot of money, because, I mean, they complain about paying the taxes, but when they find out what their house is worth, they go, whoa, this is good. This is good. But yeah, we've got we've got the biggest transfer of wealth happening right now as we're speaking. And how long is that going to be? Another 10 years? Is it?
I would think so.
10
years,
15 years.
Yeah, I look at my parents, same thing. They probably bought their home for what, $35,000, and now it's probably worth maybe a couple of million.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Government gonna make a lot of money on tax.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, like, we all like, people, depending on the area that you're in, became wealthy by default. But once they cash out, but that's it. But it's just a house to them. So
can I say one last thing? Because if I don't say this, my wife will yell at me. It's one thing to have $1 million or be a millionaire, whatever you want to call it. But if you don't know how to spend it properly, then it's a waste of having the money.
That's right.
My wife knows how to spend that money better than anyone.
Wait till she hears this. I'm going to send her the clip.
Do you guys remember the day when it was common to say, oh, if I only had $1 million in the bank, I'd just live off the interest?
Right.
Well, you can't do that anymore.
50 G's at 5%.
Yeah, you can't do that. You got to pay half of that to the government. So, but yeah, you can't do that now. That's for sure. You need about what, $3 million maybe to live. You're not living high at $3 million.
Well,
$5 million.
5%, that's 150 G income. Half of it going to the government. Can you survive on 75 G a year?
That'd be pretty tough. Like, you have to have everything paid for.
Isn't that a sad state of affairs?
You have to have everything paid for.
You know how many people just went, "Are you kidding me, Rob Nelson?"
I know.
Sad state of affairs.
I know. It's tough. Like, you know what? I know a lady. She has a house, and she bought, I'm not sure, about 10 years ago. And she lives on her own. It's tough for her, and she makes good money, and she can't believe how much it costs to live: groceries, gas, car, utility bills, mortgage, and everything. And she might have maybe $200-$300 left in her bank just to show after the whole month, and she watches everything. So it's tough out there. It's very tough out there.
We are going to be out of time here in just moments. So a big thank you to Professor Nick, who joined us this week. Nick Bontis, an award-winning professor of business at McMaster University. Thanks to Rob Golfi, as always. And Rob, once again, tell people how to get in touch with you during the week so they can ask a question for next week's show.
Yeah, questions at golfiteam.com, questions at golfiteam.com, or they can give us a call at 905-641-0308. Anytime. Don't hesitate to give us a call.
And you can look for other episodes of this show anywhere you look for your podcasts. Just type in the Golfi Real Estate Show, and the other episodes will pop up right in front of your eyes. Gentlemen, thank you. Rob, we'll talk next week.